Hey everybody, welcome back to the 116th episode of Taps and Patience, the podcast that almost didn't happen today, but AJ's bad with his calendar and turns out it can. I'm AJ with Audacity Micro, here with Harrison of Precision Ingenuity. How you doing, Harrison?
I've been better, but I'm doing all right.
I heard there was an incident.
Yeah, we'll get into that a little bit. But yeah, there was. More DN stories, so.
Yeah. Everyone's favorite stories on the podcast. Actually, our episodes where you talk about your machine issues, they do really well. The only thing that does better is when you buy a new machine.
That's good to know, I guess. Oh man.
Just keep buying new machines for our ratings, please.
Yeah, well, we'll see. There could be some more new machines in our future, that's for sure.
Ooh.
So, how we doing though?
I'm doing pretty well. So the last few weeks here, I guess I've done 2 weeks, where basically Monday evening through Thursday evening, I'm like booked solid with teaching.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, that's not quite true. I'm booked early in the morning and I'm booked late in the evening, and there's 2 hours of driving in between.
Gotcha.
So those basically become like 16-hour days.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sleeping at a hotel for those.
Oh, wow.
But that means that's basically all of my work for the week is Monday evenings through Thursday evenings. Oh. And
sorry, that's my bad.
Harrison's watching YouTube. I got boring.
No, someone texted me and it's just my wife. Sorry. Bad Harrison.
We're professionals. So basically, like, in that, I don't know, is that 36 hours? No, that 36 hours would be a day and a half. Like 3 days, essentially. I'm really, really, really busy. And then the rest of the week, I basically can come home and chill and relax. So I've designated Fridays, which is my first full day back, as being 100% hanging out with family. And then I'll get a little bit of work done on Saturdays and maybe a little bit on Sundays. And then I have all of normal working hours on Monday to work. So today is obviously Sunday, for those of you that don't know when we record. So I've had basically a couple days to chill. So I'm doing pretty well right now. I have a non-zometry job that I'm working on. I just have the one zometry job left, the big production job. There was a little bit of ambiguity on when the big production job would be due.
Mm-hmm.
They had originally told me this last batch was going to be July 24th. And then in a later email, they said June 7th. And so I was just going to go with the June 7th number because that was sooner. But I got confirmation it is actually July 24th. So I, went from having a month to work on it to almost 3 months. I probably need to go ahead and just get it wrapped up anyway. Otherwise, it'll drag on forever. But yeah. I ended up not working on that at all this week.
Fair enough.
I'll probably run a couple tomorrow. That's probably what I'll do tomorrow for the most part. But I've been working on a non-zometry job. There's actually videos on my last 2 jobs. Both of them are for the same company. The first one was the part itself was fairly simple, but the work holding was complicated, a little Ultim part. The second part of that was some little circles that were about 1.5 millimeters in diameter and 20 thou thick. And I sent those off last week. And then this week they were like, oh, so we gave you the radius instead of the diameter. Nice. So this week I'm working on some circles that are exactly twice as large, at least in diameter. And I just heard the mill finish, so those might be done now.
Sweet. That's awesome.
But other than that, I've mostly been working on subtract manufacturing.
Yeah. How's that going?
It's going really well. We have an order. Our first order is officially in progress. It's at a shop now. I believe they get their material for it Monday.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I don't know, it's good to kind of get some tests done. We're definitely still working on systems. The thing I was working on, like, literally as the podcast was started, when you first joined the call, I was working on a dashboard that would allow us to see where orders were in progress. You know, were they waiting for us to quote them, or are they waiting for DFM feedback, or have they already shipped, whatever? We needed just some way of tracking that. So I got that about 80% built out before you called. Jacob has been doing a lot of work on the quoting systems, and Scott has really been knocking the website out of the park. Scott's working about 60 hours a week right now. And the fact that he was able to get anything done was pretty impressive. So he got probably a solid 4 hours of work. And in that 4 hours of work, he finished up our branding and built us a placeholder website. So you can't submit a part yet. That'll hopefully be finished in the next day or two. By the time this podcast comes out, it'll be fixed. But there is a place where people can join a wait list, at very least, either to become a vendor or to submit parts.
Gotcha.
So making progress.
Is he still doing Design the Everything?
It's running in the background.
Okay.
I don't think it's a big source of either work or income for him, but it's limping along.
Fair enough. Well, sounds like you got a lot going on.
A little bit.
A little bit of everything.
So Subtract Manufacturing, one of my goals from the very beginning was, okay, I'm going to actually build this business right from the start. And so I started by building out processes, and we're using this really, really cool application called Obsidian, which I'm really liking. And I started with a flow chart, and you can kind of turn your flow chart into different processes. It's like I started with the naked flow chart, and then I've been slowly turning every step of the flow chart into like a process document. And then also, working with Scott and Jacob, I have done very, very little of the technical work. Jacob is handling basically all of the technical end. Scott is handling all of the branding and stuff.
Yep.
And I am mostly just organizing and guiding. I'm working on our vision document and our immediate goals. I have done a little bit. Like I said, I was working on this interface and stuff because I realized we needed it and everyone else is busy. But while I have been gone teaching, things have still been happening, and we've made a lot of progress without me. I don't want to say without me doing anything, because I was trying to do as much as I could, but we made significant advances without me directly doing the work.
Yeah.
And that was like, oh, this is how businesses work. This is what it's supposed to be like.
Yeah. Yep. That's the idea, nice. Is that you get people in, work happens while you're not, that's not directly tied to your labor. And so, because otherwise, I can't remember which book it was, but it was, and I'm gonna mess it up because I read this or listened to this book over 5 years ago. At this point, it's an older one, or it's one that I read in the beginning. But it was talking about the different types of business management, and I think you've probably been used to I think they call it the hub and spokes, where you're the hub of the business, and if you're not working, then you got to direct all of the different spokes that are actually doing the work, and then if you're not doing anything, the whole wheel falls apart, basically.
Or more appropriate than what I've been doing, I am the wheel. I'm the hub. I'm the spokes. I'm the tire.
Yeah. And then versus, and I forget the other analogy that this particular book used, but it was basically like, instead of being part of the wheel, you're like the driver, and you're directing the car where to go, and everything's just functioning around you. So,
yep,
something like that.
Lessons I'm learning
for sure.
I also sat down and talked to my dad about the finances side the other day, and he pointed out that so a while ago I'd done a video about Audacity Micro growing up. This was before Subtract Manufacturing came around. And I highlighted my 11 golden processes, which were, basically all the different steps of being a job shop. And he was like, you also need to add the 3 silver processes, which are cash flow management, capital planning, and there was a third that I can't remember right now.
You took the lesson to heart then.
Yeah. And so and that's stuff I'm not good at. And so that is something that I need to be, focusing on, educating myself on, and, start kind of working through some of those problems.
Yep. That's how it goes.
Do you guys have how do you guys manage that? I know you use profit first. Do you do any sort of longer term financial planning? I know this might be a Weston question, but
not in the traditional sense. Our planning is based off of our customers, and so especially being tied to more companies that have products that are going off, we want 10,000 of these parts per year. It's more like we talk to them, we try to figure out what parts we're going to get for them, and then we try to plan the business around being able to absorb those parts to meet the production needs. And so we're turning in from less of a job shop to more of a production shop.
Mm-hmm.
I think the technical term is contract manufacturing, where instead of doing high mix, low volume, we're becoming more of a high mix or a high volume shop, low mix. And in some ways, I feel like a lot of shops in our community are really proud of the high mix, low volume, in the sense that it's a badge of honor because it's hard and it's challenging. But I've definitely found with the contract manufacturing that it brings its own set of unique challenges. And I think, I do not like monotony. I do like the challenges of efficiency and optimization. And that's what comes in on the contract manufacturing side.
Well, and everyone knows that nothing ever goes wrong during a production job.
Oh yeah, no, we'll get into that. Everything's always smooth sailing. But I mean, in general, up until Friday, everything everything was running really smooth. Everything's been running really smooth. For the last couple months, I've kind of talked about the woes of cash flow and business growth, and kind of being strapped on cash. And we're kind of to the end of that. We've been really slowing down our purchases to the bare minimum. And we're at a point now where what we're buying on a regular basis is really low, but we're still bringing in kind of a much higher amount than we have been in previous years. And so over the next month, we should start to see some cash surplus coming into the business again, where we can start putting money aside for the next machine or the next big purchase, whatever that ends up being. And so hopefully we're kind of working our way out of that. I won't call it a hole, because we didn't really have to borrow any money, but we had to steal from all of our buckets, if that makes sense. With the profit first buckets. And so we were stealing from one bucket to pay another bucket, which is what you're not supposed to do. So, don't do that. But that's what we had to do to survive. And so now we're kind of in the process of being able to refill all of the buckets from the money that we borrowed to make payments on other things. And we're going to try to get all the buckets back up to where they're supposed to be. And then once we do that, we're going to start setting money aside for our next big purchase, which could be one of two things. And they'll probably happen together, depending on how cash works. And one of them is going to be another AC unit for the shop, and then a CMM. Those are probably the next two purchases. And we're probably going to try to get... We were looking at Hexagon, and we're still going to probably go with Hexagon. But we're going to probably end up removing a lot of the bells and whistles that we were planning on getting, just to lower the entry-level cost, and then maybe add some of those back at a later date. Or use this machine for as long as we can, and then flip it for another one at a later date. Just because we're probably going to end up getting another machine at some point this year, and I can't swing both at our current rate. And so unless I really dumb down the CMM to the bare necessities. And to be honest, if we're going in the contract manufacturing direction and doing the less of the high mix, low volume, then I don't really need a CMM that can do everything. I just need one that can do the parts that we're trying to throw at it.
Yeah.
For the contract manufacturing.
Yeah, you aren't going to be like checking the profile of a lens or whatever.
Yeah.
You're going to be measuring the same 35 points on every single part.
Yeah. And so
1 in 10 or whatever.
So we don't need it to be as versatile as we were going to try to get it. Not that we won't at a later date, but in the beginning, just to kind of get our feet wet and to make our customer happy, just getting the bare necessity to get it up and running, and still have enough cash to get another machine if some of those other jobs hit. That's going to be the right decision, I think.
Yeah, that sounds right. Is there any way you could get a lightly used one? Like a 2023 model or something like that?
Yeah. I've been in contacts with Premier Equipment. We've been looking at a couple different used ones they have. The problem that we have is that the room we're trying to put it in, and I didn't realize this because I didn't do enough research, but a lot of CMMs are pretty tall, and the room that we're going to stick it in, there's a very limited amount of CMMs that can actually fit in it because of the height requirement.
Interesting.
Our ceilings, I want to say, are just over 8 or 9 feet tall, and I think in that room, I think it's less than 9 feet, but it's greater than 8. It's like 8.5 or something. Anyways, yeah, it's just right on that borderline, and a lot of machines can't fit in there. They need at least, I think most machines need around 100 inches or more, and I think we're around 90 inches.
Interesting. I didn't realize they were tall. That's like VF2 territory, isn't it?
Yeah.
100 inches?
They're really tall. I didn't realize they were that tall either. So it kind of blew my mind. I wasn't expecting them to be that big.
On an episode earlier, I asked the question if you could actually crash a CMM. Mm-hmm. I got an overwhelming number of answers that yes, you can.
Yeah. Same. I had a lot of people that reached out there that are like, yeah, you can rapid those things in real fast and have them explode just like everything else. It's like, oh, cool. That's another nightmare I need.
Yeah, I guess that's good to know, but thanks. I didn't need that extra stress. Not that I have a CMM, but
yeah, that's funny. So yes, for those who are wondering the same question we are, yeah, you can definitely crash them, apparently. So to go into kind of what's been going on, aside from just the general overview, we've had a lot of jobs that we've just been kind of shuffling through. We've had a pretty healthy level of work. We got slow for like one day, and then the universe heard that and gave us a lot more work, which is good. But one thing that happened this week that was like, it put me on cloud 9 as like, man, it was one of those jobs that's like where you knock it out of the park and you're like, yeah, I am a badass type thing. And basically what happened was, one of my customers was working on a new product. I guess I can say, because it was Walther. Walther's working on a new product, and they had a problem with one of their parts, and so they called me at 7:30 on a Wednesday night, and they're like, "Oh, thanks for even taking our phone call. Do you think you could have a part by 10 a.m. the next morning?"
Oh.
And I was like, maybe. Let's take a look at the part. And so they sent it over, and I was like, I'll give it a shot. And so I woke up a little bit earlier, got into the shop, got it programmed, ran it on the 5-axis, and I did it as a one and done with the tabbing method. And then sanded the tabs down, and then ran it. It was an aluminum part, and I left all the edges sharp, and I stuck it in a tumbler, and tumbled it out, and then it was ready for pickup by 10. And they went and they tested it out, and it worked flawlessly, and it solved their problem. And the head engineer basically texted me and was like, that's incredible. Less than 25 hours from design to part in hand and tested. And so it was just like this massive win. And we did that on Thursday. And so like by the end of the week, Man, I was riding high on cloud nine. Like everything was going so smooth. Our finances were getting under control. We had the lathe, the mill, we had the lathe, the Doosan, and the UMC all running production jobs, and the VF we had running just regular job shop work, and like everything was just going awesome. My wife was graduated on last Friday at the university, and so I was only going to work
Not
a
high
half a
school.
day. Or yeah, and so I was only going to work a half a day on Friday, and then go see her graduation. And she should be starting a master's degree next year. So, anyways, and so it was going to be kind of a chill day. We got up early Friday morning and had a nice breakfast at a local restaurant for my kind of a celebration with my wife and my family because they couldn't make it to the graduation. Got into the shop, worked on programming some parts. Me and Weston decided that we were going to go out to lunch, and we started the machines. They were both running the UMC and the Doosan. The lathe at that point had kind of finished up its production job. We ran out of material, and so we're waiting on some more material to come in for it. So we started the Doosan and the UMC, and we went out to lunch. Ate at a place called Honey Wheat, great shop. They do awesome food.
This was
anyways,
a normal production job or a job shoppy job?
It's a job shoppy job on the UMC or on the Doosan, but it's becoming more of a production job. So the first time they ordered 50 of these parts, and this time they're ordering 150, and we've already quoted another 100 for them that they haven't approved yet. So it's kind of turning into a production job. It's a 1018 steel, and I've honestly had so much of a problem with 1018. I don't know why. It's like killing my tools faster than stainless. I don't understand. So, anyways, we've been running this job. We'd probably finished 70 out of the 150, 70 to 80. Start the job, walk out the building, and go to lunch. Weston had a dead battery in his car, so he had to stop in at O'Reilly's and swap out his battery. So he took my car and left his car there. He goes into O'Reilly to change out his battery. We've already eaten lunch, and I get on my phone just to look at the cameras to see how the machines are going. And the UMC is done. It's got the green flashing light, and the door's open, and the Doosan's got a red light on. And I was like, I have tool breakage control on some of my tools. I've been trying to add them in more and more just to make sure because I'm trying to make it to where we can walk away from the machine. And if there's a problem, like if while we're there and we're looking at it, anytime we have a problem or anything, I'm trying to add in more safety features to make sure that like I have the confidence to walk away and keep the machine running. Because our goal is to eventually get to overnight runs. And so I'm trying to make it to where if there's a problem, the machine can handle it. Apparently I didn't do that well enough.
Oh.
So I start watching on my phone, and for dramatic effect, I'm in my car and it's going through the speakers on my car. So it's like I'm right there in the shop while I'm watching this. And so I watch me start the job, go out the side door. I hear the machine running. I skip ahead, 10, 20 seconds, and I just kind of skipping ahead, just kind of listen to make sure, nothing's going wrong. I skip 10 seconds ahead, and it's the first tool running that's doing the roughing, and I hear a tink, silence. And I'm like, oh no. Oh no, did that tool just break? Did that tool just break? So I'm skipping ahead. I get to the next tool change. I hear the machine tool change come down. Bang! Oh no. How many tools did it do? I skip ahead. Hear another tool change. It's the drill comes in. Bang! Bang, 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 bang. It just, all these bad noises. And I'm just like, oh no.
This is horrifying.
Hear the next tool change. Bang! And I'm like, oh my gosh. And like, I'm sitting here in the car while Weston's inside changing out the battery. I'm just hearing just bad noise after bad noise after bad noise. And I am just shaking and sweating and so eventually it gets to a tool. It ends up breaking 4 or 5 tools. It finally gets to a tool that actually has tool breakage control on it. And it stops. And so we get back to the shop, and it is just carnage. It is just carnage. It has destroyed basically all of the large tools before it gets to all of the small tools. And the only other tool that it could have broke that would have been really, really bad, that like the last large tool in there was a 5/8 by 11 tap. And so it destroyed 3 half-inch end mills, the over half-inch size drill for the 5/8 tap, and one other tool that I can't remember off the top of my head. And it just smoked them one after another, after another, after another. And what's really frustrating about it is that the first tool that break was a Kennametal Core 6 end mill, half-inch, 2.5-inch length of cut, because this is a tall part. Fun fact, this is the part that broke the first spindle.
Oh, really? The one that got thrown?
Yes. And so when we ordered material for this job, we actually ordered it a little bit taller so we could grab onto more material in the vise. And I can say with confidence now, after this endeavor, that will not come out of the vise, because it got beat to crap and it did not budge in the vise. So that problem is solved. Anyways, it was running a Core 6 end mill, and I'd already replaced one of them, and this one was starting to get louder, and I checked it several times, and even though it was getting louder, the torque or the power required for the cut hadn't gone up very much. That's usually that's how I usually judge my tools, is like whatever it starts cutting at, if it increases by anywhere from 5 to 10%, when it gets in that 5 to 10% increase from base, that's when I'll usually swap it out for a new tool. And it was still, I think it was around 5 or 6% over base. Like it wasn't that much higher and it wasn't that much louder. And like when I looked at the teeth, they were a lot better than the one I had replaced previously. And so I thought it still had life in it. But that was the first tool that broke. And it just caused a cascade. So apparently that tool doesn't last as long as I thought, because this one didn't last as long as the first one. And bad things started happening after that. So
well, sometimes with tools you get some that last forever, and then sometimes they break fairly quickly, and you kind of have to figure out where the bell curve is.
Yeah. So it just so happens that the one time we go to lunch to run this one, that's the time it decides to break. So, because we normally eat lunch there, we're constantly listening for it. I don't think we've run this job. No, we've run it. I think we went to lunch one other time, and it did a run, and it was fine. Maybe 2. I think we might have done 2 lunches, and this was the 3rd. Anyways, we've been running the job for 2 weeks. And so just so happens that was how I ended my week last week, and I haven't been into the shop since. Because I went to graduation, and today was Mother's Day.
Yeah.
And so I haven't been back. So I have no idea what the Spindle's going to be like.
To paraphrase a Robin Renzeni quote, this trade has a way of keeping you humble.
Yeah. Anytime I start to feel good about myself, that's when I need to start looking around and go, okay, where am I? Who's coming to kick my ass? Because something's coming.
So, question of the day: how's the glass cannon? The Doosan.
Don't know. I will say this: if we do have to replace it, It's going to be the third spindle. So, something happened after we replaced the first spindle. We had that spindle for about 2 weeks, and I didn't sell it on the podcast because I'm honestly embarrassed and frustrated. But 2 weeks after we replaced it the first time, I had a small stainless steel part. I mean, it was probably 2 inches by 2 inches by 1 inch. Relatively small part in the grand scheme of things. It popped out of a vise, very similar to how the first part did our spindle in. Did that spindle in. And so we're not replacing this one unless it absolutely has to be replaced. We're just going to run it into the ground or until it starts causing problems. If it sounds bad, but it's still cutting good, at this point, I'm not going to change it. Honestly, if I did change it, we will have spent more on Doosan spindles than we did buying our first machine. If I replace it one more time.
Then the Tormach or then the
Tormach.
VF?
Then the Tormach.
I'm glad you haven't spent more on spindles than your VF yet.
No, but if we replace one more spindle, we will spend almost half the cost on the Doosan on 3 spindles.
Ouch.
So, and that's the Doosan with a 4th axis cost.
What model is this Doosan?
SVM 5100L. Yeah, with a 4th axis and a conveyor, and 3 spindles is half the price of the whole thing so far. Yeah.
Yeah. Ouch.
Yeah.
That's painful.
Yeah.
Insurance covered the first one, right?
First two. Yeah. So
you think they're going to do it again?
Well, funny thing, we were in the middle of changing insurance companies.
Oh.
And so both of those ended up on the company we were with right before we went to the one we're currently on. And we're going to stick with the one. So we had Next Insurance. And we replaced both those spindles under Next. The second time it died a week or 2 before we switched over. And so we quickly slid that one in right before we changed insurances. But we talked to our current insurance about getting another replacement. And they basically said that normally an insurance claim doesn't increase your premiums, but seems how we've only been on there for less than a year. If we have a claim this early, it could increase our premiums by 15%. So we're not going to do it if we can help it. Because that's over a couple of years, it'll basically be the cost of the spindle. So it's not worth it. Either we're going to have to fund this one out of pocket, or we're just not going to replace it. And
did you make money on your first insurance company? Did you come out ahead in that one?
Oh, definitely. Way ahead. By a mile.
So everyone who has the Next Insurance, if your rates went up, it's Harrison's fault.
By a mile. Yeah.
Man, you don't hear many stories about people beating the house.
Yeah, and it wasn't on purpose. I mean, it was purely accidental. And it's just, we were fortunate that both spindles happened under that insurance, and we were already planning on switching. And so we just happened to get it in right at the last second. So, yeah, it's brutal. My dad is furious and wants to throw the machine in the trash.
I'm kind of with him. Okay, this one was the first one I feel like should have actually broken your spindle, but the other two,
yeah, I don't blame this one at all. Like honestly, any machine that could take this beating and be okay is built like a tank. Like this was not a part slipped out of a vise, one tool broke, type deal. This was like repeated abuse, one after the other. And so like I do not blame the spindle on this one. Ironically, the spindle sounds better on this one than the other ones because we ran it through its RPM ranges and it's actually quieter than the first 2 spindles, which is weird because I feel like this one has been the most abuse and it's actually held up potentially better. We'll see. But it definitely has some noise, but it's quieter than the other 2 were after their accidents.
That's good, I guess.
Yeah. So we have high hopes that it's going to be okay, or okay enough to keep running for the time being. But I'm definitely I'm frustrated that we've had so many problems spindle related, not just spindle related, but like I don't know why on the like if I have a problem, it's always on the Doosan. I feel like that machine is like cursed in a way. And it's like I don't know. Like I've had problems on my Haas. Like the biggest problem I've had was when I crashed my probe, rapided it into the 5-axis.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, but that was a wrong work coordinate system and just early morning and I hadn't woke up. I did after that, but I was still drinking my coffee and I think I was literally taking a sip of coffee when it or like drinking some coffee when that thing rapided down and crashed. And yeah, after that I needed a new pair of shorts too. Anyways, regardless, I've had a lot of hard crashes and they are this is the first one that I feel like um there wasn't very many mistakes made other than not replacing the tool sooner, which we didn't have the history to know. Cuz like I was being so cautious cuz this was the job that killed the first spindle. Like I was so paranoid for this job. I was doing everything. I had more tool breakage control than I've ever used on any job ever. And I was trying to take as light a cuts as I could. I wasn't trying to go super fast. And like I wasn't trying to be a speed demon. I wasn't trying to do any of that stuff. I was trying to make it as efficient and reliable as possible. Like I wanted it to where I could load in a part, walk away, and not have to worry about it.
So why don't you have more tool breakage detection? Having it on the roughing tool seems like the most obvious thing to me, other than maybe drills before a tapping cycle or something.
Because we've never broke a roughing tool. We've never had a problem. This is the first time I've ever broken a tool like that mid-cycle. The only time I've ever broken a tool outside of this has been from a programming error or something coming loose. I've never had a tool break on a proven program. I've only had it wear and like get loud and start causing problems, but not actually snapping. I've never had a tool snap because of wear that I can think of.
Wow, I break a lot more tools than you do.
I mean, I break tools, but it's usually because work holding or a wrong offset type problem. Like I don't really break tools because they've worn and then they just snap. I break the most tools that I typically have broken historically have been on the Haas VF3 on the 5-axis because the rigidity isn't there and it ends up throwing the 5-axis out of alignment and then I have to realign it. And so it's made me a lot more cautious, specifically in that area, because I don't want to have to realign it because it's a full day process to get it all lined back up. But like apart from that, which I have broken tools in there, and usually what ends up happening is I'm taking too big of a cut, the part starts to vibrate, and then it catches the tool, and then it breaks and shifts everything off. But like actually running like 3-axis parts, the only time I've ever broken 3-axis tools is typically from some sort of like I'm either proving out a program and I take too big of a cut, the part shifts and it's some sort of fluke. It gets pulled out of the tool holder. Like it's never been on a production job where I'm running the same thing over and over again and then the tool breaks. That almost never happens. Does that make sense?
So do you think going forwards you would add tool breakage checks on the roughing?
Yeah, for sure on this job. And actually I might have an idea for a product after this that could help with this situation.
A better spindle for Doosan's?
No, that wouldn't have stopped the tool. And to be fair, and we can rag on Doosan a lot. I'll give them more of a benefit of a doubt. They do claim it is a light duty machine on their website.
I'll say.
Huh?
I'll say.
Yeah. So I will say, and we were touring when we were touring shops. We talked to the guys that were going from Haas to Akuma, and they talked about their techs crashing their Akumas and breaking 3/8 inch, 3/4 inch tools, constantly, and everything being fine. So those things are definitely built like tanks.
Yeah.
Like we talked to their lathe guy, and he's crashed the turret on their dual spindle y-axis lathe multiple times, and it's been fine. Which is impressive because those things historically, at least most people's dual spindle y-axis lathes, I've heard, a small crash and everything's out of alignment. So, but anyways.
Yeah, and Doosan does have the DNM machines, which I've never heard any complaints about. It's the SVM machines that are, it's a good machine for aluminum. But then you have the DNMs that are a little bit more robustly built.
Yeah. I would definitely go like SVM is definitely a light duty machine. I would put the VFs in their how much they can handle here, and then the DNMs would probably be either on par or a little bit above. I think they're a lot more rigid. Like the DNMs are definitely way more rigid than the VFs. They're a lot heavier machine, a lot heavier built machine. I don't know how much abuse they can take, but from what I've heard, they can take a lot. Like I was watching a YouTube video of a shop tour of a guy he's a full Doosan shop, and he had like 4 DNMs and 1 SVM. And he basically said, he's like, the SVM, it's a nice machine, but I'm going to stick with my DNMs.
Speaking of sticking with things, we have Patreons. Those Patreon members include James N., Bennett Prickly Pear Prototypes, Cam S., Shep at Alder Prototyping, Jacob at Zonum Precision, Jason S., Joshua H., Christian Z., Dylan at Got Chips, Freaky Climber, Prescott at 1Z, 2Z Systems, Trey V., Guy L., Alexander B., Scott at Design the Everything, Jamie at JSpec Engineering, who I'm going to talk about here in a second, Chris Zyke, EJ at Nocturnal Welding, Chris at Thought Bomb Designs, and as ever, Jake Brownson. We also have new Patreon, Nate G, which Nate G, I was looking at your Patreon username and it looks familiar to me. And I was trying to remember where I was recognizing it. And for some reason in my head, you're associated with combat robotics. So if that is you, tell me. Tell me why I recognize your name. All of our Patreons get early access to our episodes. They get it, at least a few days or up to a week before they come out. At any tier, if you pay more than $10 a month, then you get your name mispronounced on each episode. And we do actually even have a free tier. And in that free tier, you get access to the weekly Q&A. You don't get any of the other benefits, but you get access to the weekly Q&A, which we'll go over in a second. Oh, also, all paid Patreons get access to our Discord server, which has been super, super awesome and was actually where Subtract came out of. Subtract Manufacturing started on our Discord server. And in fact, our operations, but like both the communication between me and Jacob and Scott, like that's all handled on a Discord server. And even our job board right now is a Discord channel, not in the Patreon Discord, in a different Discord. But that all came out of the Taps and Patience Discord. So that's a super, super good community. Anyway, Q&A. Robert C., since you got a 60% raise, he's talking about me and my teaching stuff. Does that mean Jacob gets more money now? LOL. No, not because of my teaching raise, but the more Patreon members we get, he does get a raise. Simon V., how annoying is it to have a Doosan and Haas milling machines in regard to taper and pull studs? Is damage possible when using the wrong stud? How do you keep a clear difference between them? This one's obviously for Harrison.
So there's a very clear difference between them. You can definitely damage them if you damage the machines if you stick the wrong pull stud in the wrong machine.
Especially the Doosan.
But they are vastly different in looks. Like, it would be hard to not notice the pull stud difference. But we also try to segregate them as best we can. That way we're not intermixing tools. Like, we have one tooling cart and we do have both tools on the tooling cart, but we have areas. So like, we have these two trays are Doosan and the rest of the cart is Haas tooling. If that makes sense.
I would caution you on that one. They're easy to tell when you're paying attention or you have an experienced operator. But if you were to bring somebody in, I think the risk of that causing an issue skyrockets. Even if they're super, super competent, sometimes people don't pay attention. And that's just how people are. It's not a problem with the employee. It's a problem with people. And if you give them a system where they can screw up a machine, they will, because it's how people work.
Well, there's one more advantage that we have going, and that is all of the tool holders in the Haas machines are Haas branded, and all of the tool holders that are in the DN are Kennametal branded. So there is a pretty, not only is there a pull stud difference, but there is a visual difference. Because most of the Doosan ones are that silver color, whereas all the Haas ones are black.
I guess that's a start. I wonder if you could, like, I mean, not spray paint them, but some way add a little bit of color or something.
I mean, if we got bad enough, I'd just get a second tooling cart and just say that's a Doosan only and make it completely separate.
I think that's a good idea.
But so far, the Doosan holds, I think there's only 5 tool holders that don't fit in the Doosan right now.
Okay.
So it's real easy to keep them segregated.
I see that being a future problem, maybe in like 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Then we'll be talking about this again. Ryan K, any tips to get larger plates flat? He is making some 14-inch by 11 by 0.4 inches thick, 6061, and he's having trouble getting them flatter than 6 thou from end to end.
If you're doing any kind of production work and you're trying to keep things flat, vacuum plates. Vacuum plates are perfect for that type of work.
Yeah.
Pearson vacuum plates with the top plates you can machine. Awesome for that type of work.
Sometimes you have to do the flip and cut method where you skim off the surface and then flip it over and then skim off the surface and then flip it over and then skim off the surface and then flip it over. Definitely not something you want to do in production, but it is an option. Definitely get away from holding it in a vise if that's what you're doing, because everything is rubber. Again, to misquote Robin Renzetti.
If you're just trying to do 1 or 2, my method that I use is the same method that AJ uses all the time for everything. Super glue. I'll take a scrap piece of aluminum and I will hold it in the vise, and then I will deck that flat. And then from there, I will super glue the part down and then do everything on it. And then whenever it goes to flip it, what I like to do is I like to machine dowel pin holes for alignment, and I like to use broken end mills as my dowel pins. And so I will stick 2 dowel pins or two broken end mills, the shank bodies in the back, push my part up to it during the super glue method, weigh everything down, and then pop them out.
Chris Z says, truth or dare? Smiley face.
Smiley face. So does that mean that each of us has to ask each other a truth or dare? How's that work?
I thought I was just going to answer him truth or dare.
Oh, he's asking us.
And I'm a coward, so I'm going to say truth.
I'll do truth as well.
Okay, well, Chris Z, you can follow that up with next week's. Jake Brownson, as ever, says, I'm setting up a new shop suit. Ooh, that's super cool. What are your favorite things you did with your shops, and what do you wish you did differently from the start?
One of the favorite things I did in the shop is focus on everything that you want your shop to have in 10 years that would require you to move all of your equipment out of the shop to do on the front end. So floors, ceiling, if insulation, roof, when we bought our used building, those were all the things that we were trying to look at. The one thing that I am very frustrated about on our new shop is that the biggest complaint that me and Weston both wanted to do, a little bit of backstory. My family ended up buying the building and we're basically renting it from them. And the one thing we wanted them to do is the one thing that they didn't do, and that was replace the roof. And so when it rains really hard, we do have some leaking in our roof. And so like we wanted the roof to be done. We wanted it to be well insulated, and we wanted the floors to be done. Those were our big things before we moved in, because those are all things that once you have a functioning shop could really cause disruption.
Yeah.
Everything else can be you can kind of do while you're working and have your equipment in there. So basically, think of the biggest pain. Like if you had a whole bunch of machines in there, what would be the one thing you would not want to add later on down the line? Or what would be the things you wouldn't want to have to do later? Do those on the front end. And one of my favorite things that we did with our shop, I mean, I love the front offices that we did. I love breaking the dirty processes into their own room. So the finishing room and the laser room and the inspection room, I like having those areas separate and planned for on the front end. If I could, I would have liked to have the air compressor outside of the shop area for a couple different reasons, but it's not too big of a deal that it's in there. I like having a good hardline air system like Rapid Air. Doesn't have to be Rapid Air, but that's who we used. That's about all I got. The one thing I wouldn't do is we put metal on the inside for our roof. I would have, knowing what I know now, that was a dumb idea, and it reflects sound and bounces it all over the place. So if I were to redo a shop, I would try to add as much sound deadening on the walls and on the roof as possible to kind of dampen the noise. So no metal. That's about all I can think of that annoyed me versus we tried to run as much cabling while we were doing the renovations inside as possible. So like all of our Ethernet cables for cameras and whatnot. We don't have cameras on everything yet, but we have all of the cabling already run and ready for them. We just have been adding them over time. Whenever we get some extra cash, we'll buy a camera or something. Stuff like that.
I wish we had done the floor before I had moved in. We still have ugly concrete. It's stained all over the place. There's paint on it. It's ugly. I wish we had, like epoxied those. Now, at the time, I certainly did not have the time or money to do that. And so, like, it was never going to be any different. But if I could, the next thing, like if I moved into a new shop right now, the first thing I would do is the floors. Like Harrison, we also insulated this place. And fortunately, the walls were already insulated. And so we just had to insulate like the drop ceiling. And man, I wish I had done that sooner. We put in, we had them do like double the normal amount of insulation for a building like this. And it has been huge. It stays so nice and toasty in the winter and so cool in the summer. Putting in the mini split also was huge. I would have maybe gone with one that was slightly bigger than what I did. But really, now that I have everything insulated, that's not a huge deal. That was more of a problem before the insulation. Having the messy room broken out was another big one. That started off in a horse stall, because this was, a horse stall before it was a machine shop. And eventually we ripped out all the stabling and replaced it with a room. And that was huge. That room does get super hot, is a downside of that. And so we're planning on putting a vent so that we can vent that room. The air compressor is also in that room. That's why it gets hot when we're running a lot, or if you're sandblasting a lot. Trying to think of what else. I used the bendy version of Harrison's fast pipe stuff that they ran their airline with.
Max line.
The Max line, that's what I have, or that's what you have?
I think you have the max line, which is the flexible, and then I think the Rapid Air is the hard line.
I think Rapid Air is the company.
Rapid Air is the company. I don't remember what the hard line is.
But anyway, I put the Flexi one in. Now, I do like that I way oversized it. I think I put inch diameter in, which for my needs is way more than enough. And that's worked really well. And I put a lot of drops everywhere. That's also been nice. I don't like the Flexi stuff, though. It's so ugly.
Yeah.
Not that anything in my shop is too attractive, but it annoys me how ugly it is. And I really wish we had a bathroom. That's my biggest thing. If I could change anything about my shop right now, I would put a bathroom in.
We have 2.
Yeah, I know. I'm so jealous. And my cell setup for each machine. And I have a toolbox on one side, a computer / workbench on the other side, and then the machine in the middle. That's really nice. And I don't know if you have 2 machines, Jake. I know you have the Penta Machine Co. Solo.
I think he has a 3-axis machine.
Is a 3-axis too? Yeah, having both machines set up with a duplicate copy of the same tools in the same place in the same drawers, it's really nice. It's one of those underrated things where you don't have to build new muscle memory.
Yep.
Okay, next question. David, I'm having a hard time finding a good resource for depth of cut and width of cut. Feeds and speeds are pretty straightforward, but other factors I am struggling to find a good starting point on. Any resource suggestions?
I usually can get all that information from the manufacturer, or I will cross-reference other similar tools from other brands.
Yeah, I guess I just kind of go with what pre-tool spat out. And then if I need to make small adjustments, I will do so.
What's pre-tool? Is that tool
pre-tool is Toolpath's magic tool where you can give it your speeds and feeds library, you can give it your tool library and it'll assign speeds and feeds and all of the different presets.
That's cool.
It's really nice. David, I will say, okay, so this is how I teach it in my class. It's a Venn diagram, speeds and feeds, getting speeds and feeds that work. You have a Venn diagram. It's a 3-lobular Venn diagram where one lobe is your machine, and I would also put the fixturing in there as well. Another lobe is your tool, and then the last lobe is the material that you're cutting. And your speeds and feeds, to get a good cut, need to satisfy all 3. It's the overlap of all 3. And actually, inside that smallest overlap, you have another smaller circle that is a acceptable surface finish and part quality. And then inside that, you have an even smaller circle that's acceptable cycle time. And so to get to get a tool path that cuts and gives you good finishes and acceptable cycle time, you have to make all 3 of those factors happy. Generally, the material gets to choose the speeds part. The material will have a upper speed limit on the surface feed, the surface speed that it will allow the tool to run at. And in some cases, it also assigns a lower speed, 1018 is kind of picky, where if you run it too slow, it also looks like crap. But if you run it too fast, it looks like crap. The tool gets to decide the feed per tooth. The material decides SFM. And then your machine and work holding get to decide the depth of cut and width of cut. Now, obviously, the tool and the material also all affect that stuff.
Yeah,
but if you are low on horsepower, then the easiest thing to do, or on rigidity, then the easiest thing to do is reduce your depth of cut.
Which, depending on your the type of cut you're trying to take, that can backfire though. So for specifically high efficiency milling, if you're trying to take a light, thin cut, if you go too thin to the point where only one tooth is hitting, I have noticed a lot more vibration and reduced tool life if you have less than one tooth engaged, or if you have one tooth engaged instead of multiple.
Yeah, and that's basically determined by how tight the flutes are. What's the term for that? The helix angle. So it's not quite as simple as one Venn diagram, but that's, again, how I teach it and how I think about it. Generally, if your machine is like the rigidity of your setup generally determines the width of cut. Then your horsepower generally determines the depth of cut. Or that's how I think about it. This is an oversimplification, like everything is, but if you think about it in those terms, it'll very least help you troubleshoot some things.
The one thing I know for sure is there is no magic bullet, but there is processes that can help you find the right answer.
Yeah. But for starting points, I don't know. I just do whatever pre-tool tells me to begin with, and then I adjust from there.
Yeah. I haven't really found any. I mean, the closest I found has been Frisia, where like it just works and it's magic. But I've tried a lot of different things, and no matter what tool or resource I'm using, I always end up tweaking it slightly depending on my specific cutting parameters, whether it be machine, material, work holding. I mean, that same diagram that A just went over.
Yeah, my advice would be, if you haven't already, stick your tool library into pre-tool, and that'll give you starting points. And that's not saying that they're right for your machine, because I don't know what you have. You know, my office mill is very different than my Tormach, which would be very different than Harrison's UMC or VF3 or whatever. But once you have those starting points, it gives you something that you can change and save the results that work into the presets. And then you have a much more accurate starting point the next time around. And just every time you cut something, you build up that, that IP, that intellectual property of what
works,
what is working. Yeah. Good speeds and feeds. And then, the next time it gets a little bit easier, then a little bit easier, then a little bit easier, then a little bit easier, and so on.
Yeah. Some of my tools are getting really long lists of settings for different types of cuts for very specific situations.
Yeah. I meant to mention Jamie at JSpec Engineering. He sent me one of his new pallet bases, and I got it like right before I left last week to go teach. And I actually carried it around with me for the whole week. It got dragged across several cities. It is really, really cool. It's like the perfect balance between like functionality and simplicity. And like he nailed that sweet spot. Like he could have made it more complex and maybe, made it 10% better, but he didn't need to. And I think he hit exactly where it needs to be. Basically, besides it being like a compact pneumatic 0 point, the biggest selling point is that it uses standard pull studs like off of tools to do the retention. And it just uses dowel pins to locate the pallets. So the cost of making a new pallet is literally just a pull stud. And I'm not saying if it's a BT30 or a BT40 pull stud, because I don't remember right now. I want to say it's a BT30 pull stud and not like the Cat 40s, but
I think it is a 30, but I couldn't tell you for sure.
Yeah, I'd have to double check that. But I mean, it means making a new pallet's like, I don't know, $15 or something.
Yeah, they're pretty cheap.
And it's something you're likely to have around anyway. So super, super cool system. I'm planning on doing some testing with it. I need to send Jamie a message. I kept meaning to get back to him forever, and then I didn't for so long because I was busy that now I feel really bad, which makes me not want to message him more because I feel bad and I feel guilty. So, but his base is really, really cool. I might stick it on the Haas. I don't know. Maybe I'll put it on the Tormach. I don't know. But I even used it as a visual aid in the class that I was teaching for GM. We were talking about quick changeovers of machines and equipment and stuff, and I used that as an example.
Nice.
So you're famous at GM already, Jamie. On that note,
that's great. All right, guys. I had a lot to cover this week. Hopefully you learn from our mistakes and don't repeat them. And thanks for hanging out. This has been Harrison with Precision Ingenuity, signing out with AJ from Audacity Micro. And now
Subtractive
manufacturing. So
not subtractive. Subtract.
Subtract manufacturing. Okay.
We're gonna fight that forever going forwards.
Yeah, but that's all right. We'll catch you guys next week.
Taps and patience, our daily grind. In this machine shop, we'll always find joyous struggles, all intertwined. Taps and patience, one of a kind.